obvious, straightforward choice given how little time Andrew Strauss has had to make this decision. And he's given some quotes to Paul Collingwood. He says, "I'm genuinely excited to be leading the Test team for the Tour of the Caribbean. I can't wait to get started. Having a challenging Test series against the West Indies straight off the back of the Ashes disappointment gives us a chance from now to reset and rebuild. Playing Test matches for England is the highest accolade in the game. My objective is to give players clarity, direction and encouragement for them to start building something special. I've spoken to Joe Root and Ben Stokes, and both are excited and passionate to take the team forward in this new cycle. Although they know it won't be easy, they have the desire and bravery to do so, to do things differently to ensure the team can prosper. We have an opportunity to get back on track." So positive words there from interim coach Paul Collingwood.
Yeah, you spoke about his involvement in the short form of the game, but what coaching experience does Collingwood have?
After a very successful England career in which he became the first England captain to bring home a global trophy, that was the T20 World Cup in 2010. He then moved into coaching with Durham. He took on a role as captain and assistant coach with Durham. He led them to the County Championship, that was in 2013, and then the One Day Cup the following year in 2014. He then moved to Scotland. He coached with Scotland at the World Cup in 2015, and then he took on a role with England as an assistant, as an advisory role, consultancy role, mainly as a fielding coach on a part-time basis, and then eventually a full-time basis. As I say, he's well liked within the group. His skill set as a player was wide, varied. He was a good batsman, but also a good bowler and an excellent fielder. So his main role with the England team has been as a fielding coach, but he's a key man now in the England dressing room. He's the key man to try and bring England out of this mess, create some positivity in the camp, and come away from the West Indies with something for English cricket fans to smile about.
It would be nice, wouldn't it? OK, so how much is he a serious contender to get the job full-time?
If he wants it, I think he is definitely a contender, and he's got a chance, hasn't he, here to showcase what he can do. I think Paul Collingwood might benefit particularly if they decide to split the roles of red ball coach and white ball coach, which Andrew Strauss has hinted he would like to do, but that will depend on the new director of cricket. If they split the red ball, white ball roles, then I think Paul Collingwood would be right up there as a contender to take on the white ball role, given his experience as a player and a coach as a white ball specialist, and given he's got so much experience in that dressing room. But, of course, all this will depend on who becomes the director of cricket, because it's the director of cricket who will appoint the coaches and indeed make the decision as to whether they do split the roles. Andrew Strauss is in favour of it, but that doesn't mean that the new director of cricket will be in favour of it.
OK. I sense plenty of questions. James, thank you very much indeed. If only we had a man to speak to who knows all about leading a team. Well, thank goodness we do, because the former England captain Michael Atherton joins us now. Lovely to see you. Good appointment, this one, do you think?
Hi, Rob. I'm not sure I can add any more to what James has said, to be honest. He covered it in great detail and depth there. This was a widely touted move, really. Paul Collingwood has been in and around the setup. He's been with England's T20 side in the Caribbean. He's still in the Caribbean, having a bit of a post-tour holiday, I think, with his family. He's on the payroll. He's pretty highly regarded within the setup. So for all those reasons, it makes a lot of sense for him to do the 3 Test matches in the Caribbean, but it's only short term. And as James rightly said, it's going to depend really on who Strauss picks as director of cricket, because all the decisions, the more permanent decisions, are going to be made by whoever that person is.
OK, we'll get to that in a moment. As far as Collingwood is concerned, though, what are the main areas he needs to look at for this West Indies tour?
Well, they've got to pick the team, first of all, which I think is going to be announced tomorrow. So there'll be a panel of which Collingwood will obviously be part of. Strauss will be there, James Taylor, no doubt, Mo Bobat. All these people will have an input into the selection of the squad. That'll be announced tomorrow. It'll be very interesting to see which way they go. Not many people in that Ashes squad could hold their hands up and say, I absolutely deserve or demand a place in this team. So how different it will look from the team that went to Australia remains to be seen. And then clearly lots of issues in terms of the way the team has played over the last year, principally the batting, which has underperformed with the exception of Joe Root. But in Australia, the catching, the kind of fundamentals of the game, no balls, catching, lots of areas that England could work on, really. So, but how much can an interim coach really affect that in the short time available? I'm not sure. You know, all these things are more a kind of medium-term process for whoever gets the job in the long term.
OK. Talking of which, I mean, you must have your private thoughts on who will take the senior role here then as the director of cricket. So, if you've got that in your head, is Collingwood a serious contender to become head coach?
He's a contender for sure. He's been in around the setup under Chris Silverwood, so that's not necessarily an advantage because clearly they've wanted to make some fundamental changes from the way the team has been performing in the last year or two, and Collingwood has been a part of that. I think that there are some key structural decisions to make, first of all, before you think about the personnel, something that James touched on in his chat with you. Are England going to give it to one man to coach across formats? As far as England are concerned, that's a heavy responsibility because they tend to play more or as much as any other team. There's rarely an off period for England because they have a long domestic summer and then are usually touring to various parts of the world in the winter. So there is hardly a time to step away from it if you appoint one man. And what that does is it kind of narrows the field because a lot of fairly good young candidates would bulk a little bit at going on the road for 12 months of the year if they've got young families or whatever. A lot of them prefer the franchise roles now, which last up to 2, 3, maybe 4 months. So that's the first question, really, structurally. Do you want to split it and therefore broaden your talent pool and have two distinct coaching setups, one for red ball, one for white ball? I suspect that's the way they'll go. I don't know. James said Andrew Strauss definitely wants that. I'm not sure he said that. He kind of intimated it, but that's not for him to make that decision. It's for whoever the new director of cricket is. So you decide the structure first of all, and then you determine who the personnel will be. Paul Collingwood would be a contender. He'd probably be a slightly stronger contender for the white ball setup if they split it that way, given that they definitely want to try and revamp England's test match performances. And as I say, Paul Collingwood has been part of the setup that they've really overthrown or overturned in the last few days. Yeah.
Joe Root, let's talk about him. Appears to be staying on as captain for this tour. I noted with interest the quotes from Paul Collingwood there, talking to him. Was there any debate over this one? How much was that the right decision?
Well, it's a short-term appointment as such because Strauss made it clear in his press conference a couple of days ago that he's right behind Joe Root for now, but that appointment very much is in the hands of whoever the director of cricket will be when that guy comes in, or girl, whoever it may be. It's probably the right thing to stick with him for now. I do think the focus has to come back on the players and the captain. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about the coaches over the last few weeks. Obviously, key people there have lost their jobs: Ashley Giles, Chris Silverwood, Graham Thorpe. But captain and the players need to take responsibility for performance. Joe Root's, been party to many of those decisions that have cost other people their jobs. And it's really only the kind of lack of alternatives that has determined that he continues to lead England in the Caribbean. Whether that will be the case beyond the tour, who knows? We'll have to wait and see.
OK. So I guess the immediate reaction to post that is rip the whole thing up, get rid of them all, let's start again. But you have to be prudent in these things. Would you make wholesale changes from the Ashes squad?
Well, I think there had to be some changes to the management of the team. As painful as that is, nobody likes to see people lose their jobs. You're talking about human beings and livelihoods. Nobody likes to see that. But as painful as it is, I think they had to make some changes given how the team had performed for the last year or so and given the way the Ashes went. So they've made some pretty quick and brutal changes there. 3 senior positions in management or coaching. But as I say, the focus now has to come back on the captain and the players. I would keep things simple. I would just pick what is perceived to be the best team to win 3 Test matches in the Caribbean. I think it was Stuart Broad towards the end of the Ashes who reflected a little bit on what I'd been talking about throughout the Ashes tour, that England for a period now, partly because of COVID and restrictions and bubbles and all that thing, have been constantly thinking ahead 6-9 months down the line and rather lost sight of what's in front of them. And I think they do have to get back to keeping it pretty simple and trying to win the next game that is in front of them. Now, from the Ashes, there are not that many players who can definitely say, you know, I demand a place in this setup because of my performances. There's only 3 or 4 really. But equally, most people would think that the kind of nub of that squad, the core of that squad, are amongst the best players that England have to offer. So I'm sure that there's going to be a nucleus of that Ashes squad that will go to the Caribbean. And there may be 1 or 2 new faces that come in. But I don't think they'll be ripping it up and starting again. I think I'm right in saying, although somebody may correct me if I'm wrong, that it's part of the World Test Championship. And England are clearly languishing near the bottom of that table or at the bottom of that table. So they've got to start winning some games and picking players to do that.